The upcoming 2 episodes airing Thursday, April 3rd and Friday, April 4th, 2025 are packed with suspense, emotional turmoil, and explosive secrets that could change the lives of many forever. In what is being dubbed the next major storyline, the long-feared and often controversial character EJ finally faces a moment of reckoning. He is shot. And while EJ has spent years accumulating enemies through manipulation, lies, and shady business dealings, the news of his shooting leaves the entire town stunned and scrambling for answers. But who pulled the trigger? A town of suspects. As the storyline unfolds, it becomes clear that the question isn't who wanted to hurt EJ, but who finally had enough to actually do it. Over the years, EJ's behavior has left a bitter trail of resentment and betrayal. Now, that resentment seems to have caught up with him in the most violent way possible. Initially, suspicion falls on a familiar group of potential suspects. Law enforcement officer Rafe, who has clashed with EJ many times over moral differences, tops the list. Then there's Paulina, known for her fierce loyalty to her family, and let's just say EJ hasn't exactly been kind to hers. Kristen, EJ's own sister, is another name being whispered in hushed tones. Her volatile past and emotional outbursts make her both unpredictable and dangerous. Then there's Johnny, EJ's own son. He's been hurt by his father more than once, both emotionally and through years of power struggles. It's possible he finally snapped. A new twist, another man with a gun, but the story doesn't stop there. As preview photos for Thursday's episode are revealed, another surprising suspect enters the fray: Roman. Seen holding a gun, Roman's presence in this mystery adds a whole new layer. Roman has always been protective of Kate, and if he discovered that EJ had threatened her children, that might have been enough for him to act. Roman's calm exterior has masked deep loyalty and passion before. Could he be the one who crossed the line? The mystery deepens when Ava is shown with a gun, a weapon borrowed from Melinda. Ava, a character known for always teetering on the edge of reason, has her own complicated history with EJ. However, it seems her revenge is more focused on Kristen and little Rachel. Still, a desperate person with a gun is always a dangerous variable. Ava's recent announcement that she's leaving Salem adds another layer of intrigue. Is her departure timed with the shooting because she's running from the crime, or escaping another threat? The aftermath. Who found EJ? In one of the most emotional scenes of the Thursday episode, it's Chad who discovers EJ's body, lying unconscious on the DiMera living room floor. EJ is bleeding and unresponsive. The sight shakes Chad to his core, and from there, things escalate quickly. Chanel, visibly anxious, is seen worrying about Johnny. Her concern is twofold. Is Johnny devastated because his father was shot, or is he panicking because he's responsible? It's a painful question, but one that lingers in the air. Chad stays by Johnny's side, offering him comfort, but the strain is visible on both men. Secrets between father and son, old wounds, and questions of loyalty all swirl in the chaos following the shooting. Friday's episode, grim news and more accusations. As Friday's episode begins, EJ's condition has worsened. After being rushed to the hospital and stabilized, things take a dramatic turn. Dr. Kayla delivers devastating news to Chad. EJ has suffered complications, possibly a seizure. The medical team is doing everything they can, but there's a looming fear that he may fall into a coma. For all his faults, EJ's potential loss sends ripples through the DiMera family and the town at large. Meanwhile, back in Salem, the rumor mill is working overtime. Leo and Javi get into a heated debate over who could have done it. Was it Gabby? Was it Rafe? Their conversation turns from speculation to accusations. Emotions are running high and nobody is safe from suspicion. In the most shocking development of the day, Kristen is brought in for questioning by JJ. Known for her volatility and sharp tongue, Kristen doesn't deny that she had a gun. But when pressed, she hits back with a brutal truth: there are enough people in Salem with a motive to shoot EJ that the entire town square could be filled with suspects. That remark is more than dramatic flair, it's a chilling reminder of how many enemies EJ has made. Jada's sadness, Sean's return, and a bittersweet reconnection elsewhere in Salem. Not all the drama is centered around EJ. Jada is dealing with her own personal heartbreak. Drowning in sadness, she crosses paths with Sean, an old flame. The two find themselves talking, first out of necessity, then out of comfort. As emotions surface, so do old feelings. If her relationship with Rafe is truly over, this encounter with Sean may lead to a second chance neither of them saw coming. Jada's vulnerability is palpable. and Sean's return to her life might not be as temporary as it seems. In the midst of chaos, love sometimes finds a way back in, even if it's unexpected. Everyone's a suspect as the investigation into EJ's shooting continues. Expect more names to be thrown into the mix. Kate, Gabby, Ava, Roman, Kristen, even Johnny, no one is off limits. The complex web of relationships and resentments in Salem means that everyone had a reason. And now everyone will have to answer questions. Even Gabby, often brash but honest, raises the uncomfortable point. Who knows what we're capable of? She isn't just talking about herself. She's talking about all of them. In Salem, even the most unlikely person can surprise you. The road ahead, what started as a shocking act of violence, will now spiral into a tangled mystery with emotional stakes for nearly every major character. With twists still to come, and several characters hiding secrets of their own, the next few episodes of Days of Our Lives promise to be some of the most compelling in recent memory. For longtime fans and newer viewers alike, the question now is not just who shot EJ, but what happens to Salem when the truth comes out. Next, a dangerous man. Chanel confronts EJ in an emotional showdown by Soapline Weekly contributor back in the Grand DiMera mansion. Night had settled over Salem, but the storm inside was only beginning to rage. EJ DiMera sat in his darkened study, a half-empty glass of scotch clutched in one hand. His jaw tight and his thoughts darker than the room around him. The shadows flickered across his face, not unlike the regrets flickering across his mind. Belle's betrayal, wearing a wire, working against him, had been a shock, and yet part of him knew it was coming. Still, it stung. As he took another sip of the aged liquor, trying to drown the bitter taste of disappointment and betrayal, he didn't hear the sharp footsteps approaching. The door burst open, and Chanel Dupree stood in the threshold like a whirlwind of righteous fury. "You've done it this time, EJ," Chanel snapped, eyes blazing with hurt and anger. "You've ruined everything." EJ let out a long, weary sigh, barely meeting her eyes. "Let's get this over with, shall we?" he said, his voice low and tired, as if he'd been expecting this confrontation all along. But Chanel was not about to let him off the hook with indifference. "You knew Johnny and I were trying to adopt. You knew how much this meant to us, how much we needed this child in our lives," she said, her voice shaking with emotion. "All you had to do was stay out of trouble. All you had to do was not be a criminal for once. Was that really so hard?" EJ's silence spoke volumes. The proud DiMera heir was rarely at a loss for words, but this time there was nothing he could say that wouldn't make things worse. Chanel's voice turned cold. "You are a dangerous man, EJ. Amy, our caseworker, was right to be afraid of you. Who wouldn't be after what you've done?" Her hands trembled as she added, "You single-handedly destroyed our chance at giving a child a loving home." The tension in the room thickened, and for once, EJ didn't try to defend himself. Perhaps he knew better. Perhaps the weight of what he had done was finally starting to press down on him. "I suppose it's for the best then," EJ muttered bitterly. "Johnny's cut me out of his life. Doesn't want anything to do with me?" Chanel blinked. "He what?" EJ gave a sad half-smile. "He said I'm dead to him. And after everything, I can't say I blame him." The news hit Chanel like a punch to the chest. Though she and Johnny had their own struggles, she knew how deeply he once loved his father, how fiercely he had tried to hold on to some image of the man he once believed in. To hear that Johnny had finally given up on EJ, it was heartbreaking, even if it was justified. Chanel took a shaky breath. Maybe he could have forgiven you. Maybe if you had shown even the slightest remorse. But you didn't. You doubled down. You went right back into cahoots with the same man who hurt Sammy. You think Johnny didn't notice that? She shook her head. That wasn't just a mistake, EJ. That was a choice. A pattern. And it shows you've learned nothing. EJ's composure faltered. The weight of his son's rejection, Chanel's fury, and the realization of his own actions began to close in on him. "I didn't mean for this to happen," he said quietly. "I never wanted to hurt Johnny. Or you." Chanel narrowed her eyes. "But you did." She turned to leave, but as her hand reached for the doorknob, EJ spoke again, this time with the vulnerability of a father who knew he had lost more than just a son. "If you see him, if you talk to Johnny," EJ said, voice cracking slightly, "please, just tell him I love him. Even if it's the last thing he wants to hear." Chanel hesitated. Part of her wanted to walk away without another word. But somewhere, beneath the pain and betrayal, she recognized the flicker of sincerity in EJ's voice. "I'll tell him," she said at last, her voice soft but firm. "But don't expect it to change anything. She walked out, leaving EJ alone with his guilt, his scotch, and the ghosts of a fractured family. Reflection and fallout in Salem. This confrontation between Chanel and EJ wasn't just about an adoption gone wrong, it was a boiling over of years of pain, disappointment, and fractured trust within the DiMera family. For older viewers of Days of Our Lives, it brought to mind the legacy of EJ's manipulation, his dark alliances, and the long-standing toll it has taken on everyone who's ever tried to love him. EJ's relationships with his children have always been complicated. With Johnny, there was once hope, a flicker of connection that made fans wonder if redemption was possible for EJ. But this latest blow, involving underhanded business dealings and associations with men who nearly destroyed Sammy Brady, may have finally sealed EJ's fate. As for Chanel, her anger wasn't just about the adoption, though that loss cuts deep. It was about betrayal, about having her future with Johnny stolen by a man who has made too many enemies to ever be considered safe. Her words weren't just scolding, they were a final warning. EJ has crossed too many lines, and the people around him are done paying the price.